right, we good to go? You guys hearing me everywhere? All right. Hello, everyone out there online. Hello to our in-person audience. My name is Kate. Welcome to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy. If you're new, our format for tonight is that Guy is going to come on in just a moment and he'll give an hour-long talk. And then we'll take a short 5-minute break. We'll come back for part 2 of class at that point, which will be an open dialogue, discussion, Q&A time with all of you in the room, all of you online. So I do hope you're able to stay for the full 90 minutes. Let's see, if you're in the room, if you could check your cell phones if you brought one in with you and just make sure that it's off or in silent mode. And for you guys online, if you have any tech issues during the broadcast, you can reach out to us in the question box, the chat area, wherever it is where you're watching from. I'm going to be watching those messages and I'll do what I can to help you. All right. I'm going to check with my team. We're still good. Okay. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to read our topic and key lesson for tonight, and then I'll hand it over to Guy. Here's the topic. The long, strange journey to being happy with who you are. And here's the key lesson. I've been a pirate, looting the hearts of any I could board and pillage for my pleasure. I've been a priest, consoling and confusing any I could deceive and profit from by my practiced piety. I've been anyone that everyone wanted me to be. I've danced for a drink and lied without hesitation to ensure others my word is good. The truth is, I've been everyone but myself.
So I don't see the key lesson anymore.
That's me, guys. You want it up?
I would like to see it while I'm making some introductory comments. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, we've got trouble right here. You know why we have trouble? It's the time for holiday family gatherings. It's pretty extraordinary. Something we're going to look at quite deeply together tonight as part of our process of doing the discovery work that we do on Wednesdays, every other Wednesday. Aren't the next 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks supposed to be filled with joy and good tidings? And what's it like for you? I remember, without going into too much detail about this, back in the day I was actually friends with the Beach Boys. Most of us don't know who they are anymore, but fun, 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 till your daddy takes your TV away. They were quite a successful group. My partner and I, musical partner, we had a good relationship with them, and I very much enjoyed the genius of Brian, Carl, the people in that group. They had their own 8-track studio, which was something special back in the day. We're talking about in the late 70s, early 80s. And then as things happen and life moves on, then one day after being away from any form of media or TV for a while, I happened to turn on a rock concert some 30 or 40 years later, and I'm kind of shocked, because they're like the Beach Gramps. And everybody's still rocking, just like they did when they heard them back in the day. Not hearing at all what they are anymore, not hearing their voices, not experiencing the reality of what time does inevitably, inexorably. and completely living out the experience they had a long time ago, and the sensation of that taking the place of the experience they're having now, and not seeing any difference at all. Now you may say, what's the harm in that? And I would say none. If that's pleasing to you, great. Go see the Grateful Dead. I want to look at something with you today that will help explain so much to you about this attraction, dependency, the attachments, and mostly why it is that our lives are spent, as I trust you'll agree with me, in an almost constant conflict with anyone and everything that in that moment seems to challenge something in ourselves that we're not aware of, as a nature that's come into that moment that's going to feel this resistance and have this negative reaction, much like you would have at your Thanksgiving dinner table with friends and family. I don't want to get into a rant here. I've heard the most extraordinary things on the news recently. Do you know there are people that won't go and have Thanksgiving with their friends and family because they voted the opposite of what they voted like? And they're being encouraged. That's a good idea. Don't go there. These psychotic, horrible, monster human beings passing themselves off as teachers and psychologists and psychiatrists, encouraging people to avoid people that don't live like they do. That's the recipe for hell. And everyone who lives in that world lives in hell without knowing it and have no idea why they live in that world. Happy Thanksgiving. The key lesson says, I've been a pirate, looting the hearts of any I could board and pillage for my pleasure. What does that mean? That means I have found ways to steal into the life of others and to take from those lives what I wanted and thought was necessary for me to have. I've been a priest, consoling and confusing any I could, deceive and profit from my practiced piety. How many times do you put that, I almost said a bad word, that spiritual grin on your face, that all-knowing look across the brow, where suddenly you are the father and the mother of all that ever lived, and you know exactly what it is. And in the meantime, you have boarded their ship and steal from them by trying to win their approval for what you tell them is the answer to their pain, when you have no idea what the answer is to their pain. All you have is a momentary sense of self that delights in deceiving others because for a moment it makes you feel like you actually are as you've imagined yourself to be. Happy Thanksgiving. I've been anyone that everyone wanted me to be. You know, you have no idea that's true about you. I've danced for a drink and lied without hesitation to ensure others my word is good. What ends haven't you gone to impress somebody with who and what you think you are, so that they would trust in you and give back to you whatever it was that you were looking to get from them to confirm yourself as you've imagined yourself as being? The truth is, I've been everyone but myself. Do you know that before you can know anything about the life of God, to use those words, the divine life, you're going to have to pile through every last one of these pirates, these priests, all of these legion of eyes that dwell in the darkness of a human being that are so practiced at appearing as if they understand and that they're in the light that it never dawns on them that the whole reason they have to pretend to be anybody at all is because they don't know anything about themselves. Why is the last thing that I know myself? You can take that key lesson down now. Why is that? You know, it takes a long time. I think some of you are beginning to actually suspect that your motor mouth, your insipid, constant self-referencing, that maybe there's something that isn't quite right like that. Always in thought, one disconnected from another, but finding an identity with every particular thought that possesses you in that moment. And being so confident in your sense of self that's the product of some psychological condition that has momentarily captured your identity, and then believing with all that you are that that is in fact who and what you are, when it's not who and what you are. And every bit of our life, over and over and over again, not just at the dinner table with friends and family, not just over the holidays, but just endlessly running into a moment that seems to shatter like glass, whatever this sense of myself is, and then spending the rest of the day or my life trying to put it back together again. What is at the root of the fact that I don't know myself? Because that's what this work is about. That's what spiritual life is for. That all of your studies are intended to continually bring you back to a sharper, more clear resolution of what you have yet to realize, and to see that what you thought you understood served you no good at all in the moments where conditions challenge it. So I have a couple of stories tonight that I want to use to help you understand something that's essential. It'll help you get would you like to be, I know you would. Who doesn't want to be a better person? Who wouldn't like in some way, even in the smallest measure, to be able to consistently turn the cheek, not demand an eye for an eye? Who wouldn't want to put down all of those thoughts that come like waves to carry you seemingly to a safe harbor, when in truth they drop you off on some sharp bank of shoals, and then you have to rescue yourself again with the same nature that distracted and tempted you with the first wave of thoughts? Who wouldn't want to be free of that? How do we find who we are? And it comes at the cost of discovering all and who you are not, which is what we're going to look at. Quick story. Nice deep breath. I think the worst part's over. So here's a young athlete who wants to excel at high jump. Now you understand this is a parallel for your spiritual life, right? Who doesn't want to excel at rising above whatever the present bar is in your life? We all have bars in our life, don't we? We're always trying to get over them. So he goes to the coach and he says, you know, I've been stuck at 3 feet 6 inches. Don't laugh. Some of us would be delighted to get over 3 feet 6 inches. I've been stuck at 3 foot 6 inches for like 4,000 years. And I just can't seem to get over that bar. I can't get over whatever is in the way of my rising above myself. I don't understand what's going on. Occasionally I do rise and I achieve it, but it's so infrequent. And when I really need to be able to do it, in quotes, in the competition, I can't. And the coach says to him, are you sure you want to know? He says, of course I do. And the coach said, the reason that you can't is because you have to work at it from where you are. You have to work at it from what you are. not where you imagine you are, and certainly not with what you don't want to know about where you are. Now, you may think that story is a silly little story, but I can't tell you how everything about the inability for a human being to participate in ascending this ladder, that you're here on this planet, from level to level to level. Why do I remain at the same level? Petty tyrant, pirate, stealing, pious liar, thief that I am, stealing everything while making people smile as I take from them what I do. How come I can't rise above that? And the reason is because over and over again, you come to a moment where it's possible for you to see the fact of what you are, but you do not want to see that fact. Remember how we started the talk on Sunday? I said, here's a person, they stand in front of a mirror, and they look at themselves in the mirror, and they don't like what they see in the mirror. Do you remember as that? And we thought, well, how is that possible? That I could look at myself in the mirror and not be who I want to see? How can I not be who I want to see? If you could explain to me how I could be someone who I don't want to see, then you would be well on your way to developing the next level of your leap, spiritually speaking. How can I not want to be who I don't want to see? And it is true, isn't it? And then when I don't want to see what I look like, I don't want the experience of, how can I not want the experience of seeing myself? To us, it makes perfect sense. That's the problem. To me, it makes perfect sense. I don't want to see that about myself. Not only do I not want to see that about myself, but if you can extrapolate the idea, if I don't want to see this about myself, and I know that's ludicrous, how much more insane is it that I don't want to see that about you? Do you ever think to yourself, I don't want to see this person, I don't want to talk, I don't want anything to do with that person? What person are you talking about? You're talking about your experience with that person. So you say, I don't want that experience, believing that the experience is because of the person or because of what you see in the mirror. But the fact is, everything that you see is in the mirror of this mind. And that's all we see is in the mirror of this mind, and we don't want to see in that mirror, which is why we're always missing the mark. Albert Camus, he said, man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. Man is the only creature who refuses to be what he is. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time with this, but you have to understand there's two sides to that. On one hand, man is the only person who refuses to be what he is because that individual who aspires to know another order of being, who wants to live without fear, he refuses to be a fearful person. That's where he starts. I don't want to be this kind of person, so I refuse to be what I am in this moment. But if simply refusing to be what I am in the moment was the same as being released from what I don't want to see, then how many of you would already be liberated? Because we're full of not wanting to see ourselves, because we're equally full of what we should be seeing. So what is the nature of this should be that's at the constant source of denial and resistance? What's at the root of that? The only creature who refuses to be what he is, let alone who and what he is, who, listen, for his refusal to see and to be what he is, lives in an endless state of conflict, not just with others, but with himself, who he summarily rejects every time that he sees something in the mirror of the moment that he doesn't want to see. So on one hand, I refuse to be what I see, which is good. I shouldn't accept, I shouldn't go gently into that good night. But on the other hand, I live in the darkness of a nature that believes somehow or other that what I see that I don't want to see is a threat to myself. That I ought not, that I judge myself summarily when I see things about myself I don't want to see. Yes or no? Now, to make a jump, I am at all times, when I see something that I don't want to see, For instance, the high jumping, the young man who wants to high jump. What did the coach say to him? Until you see where you actually are, what your level of understanding and skill is, nothing's going to change. But you don't want to see your level of skill. You don't want to see what you're able to do, because all you can see is what you imagine you should be able to do, who you've decided you ought to look like, so that in the imitation of what you imagine you should be, you are in constant conflict with what you are. In identifying with what you've imagined you should be, that is in a constant source of state of conflict with what you are. Do you understand that much? So here's our heroine, Christine. She goes to see the good doctor. Now, most of you know this. If you've not been with me and you're still with me after my happy Thanksgiving greeting, I use certain stories to promote ideas that allow us to gain insight into things that we don't understand. And Christine represents an aspirant on her way to making these discoveries, and she goes to see this good doctor who represents an understanding she doesn't have yet, but that is still a part of her, so that she can have insight into what it is that she doesn't understand. And she has all of these experiences that, instead of explaining them to herself now, because she's gotten far enough along the line, she consults, she contemplates, she goes to see the good doctor. So she goes to the good doctor, and he says, "What can I do for you?" She says, "We had an early family dinner, the holidays." "Of course I do. Isn't that Happy Thanksgiving?" "No, it wasn't." "What do you mean it wasn't?" She said, I don't know how to say this to you, but before I know it, I'm sitting at the table, and there's just 40 of us there. And before I know it, I'm instantaneously on the defensive. And nobody even had to say something. I look over and I see my brother's wife, and she's looking at me. And in a heartbeat, I feel stress. I'm strained. And that's just for the glass of wine before they serve the meal. I don't know what to do with myself. What's wrong with me? I don't want to go through my life in my relationships with others and with the world around me, constantly on the defensive because I feel that somebody has been offensive to me. Do you ever feel like people are offensive to you? What am I going to do? What's wrong with me? And in the essence, to keep it short, he says, well, everything, but nothing. What kind of answer is that? She said, I need a real answer. Everything and nothing does nothing for me. He says, well, the good news is, because we don't have a lot of time, I know what the problem is. Well, what's the problem? He said, you have mucks. I have what? What does she have? Mucks. God, that sounds terrible. Is it fatal? It could be. He said, the truth is, though nobody sees it, most of humanity dies from it. It's a slow, soul-stealing syndrome that takes from human beings everything they need in order to be reborn, so that instead of discovering why they're on this planet, they live in a constant darkness that grows darker every time they become the further incarnation of mucks. Now, at this point, what is Christine doing? She's losing her mind. Mucks? Mucks? What is mucks? And you know that all of these things, when she goes to see the doctor, mucks, M-U-C-S, is an acronym. What is the acronym for? She said, what is mucks? He said, you could write it down. I would urge you to do so. It stands for multiple unseen conflict syndrome. Multiple unseen conflicts. She said, multiple unseen conflicts? What are you talking about? She said, what am I in conflict with? He said, well, You can tell me if I'm wrong, Christine, but didn't you just tell me that you go to a family gathering or you're at work or whatever you're doing, and in a heartbeat you're defensive? Didn't you say that to me? Yes, I did. But I don't understand what that has to do with conflict. He says, well, would you like to examine it? She said, I would very much like to understand why my feeling attacked, why I go on the attack, why my defensiveness, why I don't want to be around. So I would very much like to know what is mux. Would you like to know what mux is? Would you like to have a happy holiday where you come out on the other side having had a feast in the presence of your enemies? Yes? Yes. Okay, then we're going to build a list. This is where we go into studying the nature of mux, but we start at a certain distance and we work our way into it. Bring up the list, please, for study. Name something that friends, family, even a stranger may say or do to you that brings up a negative reaction in you because a part of you takes it as some kind of an insult. Name something that friends, family, even a stranger may say or do to you, whether intended or not, that brings up a negative reaction in you because a part of you takes it as some kind of an insult. Now, I'm going to prime the pump. This was huge for me. This is God's honest truth. When I was a young man, when I'd go to a market or someplace and I'd go to write a check, and if they asked me for an ID, I took it as an absolute insult. Now, back in the day, you have to understand, it's not like today. Today you need your passport and 3 other forms of ID to be able to do anything. But what was going on that I would be insulted by being simply asked to prove who I was? Do you understand? Another here. How about, what do you feel like when somebody challenges a decision that you've reached? It sounded like something. How about when someone questions your intelligence? Do you not take that as an insult? Yes or no? How about if somebody, God help them, should point out an inadequacy on your part? Do you go, thank you so much for showing me this inadequacy? Or do you immediately want to pounce on them because in your mind you see them as insulting you? Yes or no? So I'm asking you now, name something friends, family, a stranger may say or do that brings up a negative reaction because a part of you takes it as an insult. Ellen.
Unsolicited advice.
Well, I'm sorry for you, Ellen. She said, unsolicited advice. Don't you love unsolicited advice? How many of you give unsolicited advice? Yeah. It's an insult. Why is it an insult? I don't need your stinking I don't need your stinking badge. I don't need any consultation. If I did, I'd ask for you. Terry.
Being interrupted.
Don't interrupt me, because if you do, you are insulting everything that God brought you into this moment to receive from me that you're not going to get because you interrupted me. Chris on the board says, telling me something, I guess, raises an eyebrow as if I don't know, pretty much. Anybody that even assumes that I don't know what I'm talking about, God help them. It's an insult. Deborah.
If somebody asks me why I'm being negative, nothing makes me more negative.
If somebody says, why are you negative?
Why are you being negative?
You take that as an insult? Don't miss a talk. Do you hear me? On the board, Joan. Yes, of course, anytime someone's condescending, patronizing, doesn't that drive you insane? John.
Why did you park there?
We're not into personal relationships here, John. John, I get it. He's saying that when I'm with my wife and she says, why did you park there? I take it as an insult. And I would too, John, honestly. How many of you, backseat drivers, that's an insult, isn't it? Like, I don't know what I'm doing as you pass the sign that says Arizona when you were headed to San Francisco. Chica.
Wrong password.
Wrong password.
Wrong? Oh my goodness, Chica, you are in such trouble. She's not mad at someone. She's mad at the program saying that she has the wrong password. Do you get angry with Alexa too, Chica? Yes, Roger.
When somebody tells me I'm wrong,
Anytime somebody suggests that I'm wrong, instantaneously, I feel like it's an insult. Yes, Nick?
when someone starts to glaze over when you start to share your thought, they kind of disappear.
I don't know what it is. Like, you have like matzo balls in your mouth? I can never.
When you start to share your thought, they disappear. Their eyes glaze over. They don't
Some of you should listen to this. If when you're talking to somebody, they're leaning way back like this, it's because you're too close and they don't care. So when people give you unsolicited advice, so forth and so on, it feels like an insult. Who was it? Deb.
Somebody tells me I'm not listening, I'm not hearing them.
If someone says you're not listening to me. And by the way, you're probably not. But the fact is, I take it as an insult anytime someone suggests that I'm not Terry. Yeah.
When someone doesn't recognize an act of kindness or generosity.
If I'm generous and somebody fails to notice it, that's about as insulting as it can get. Who else? David.
When someone asks me how I am,
I'm not even going to repeat that. And that is an insult. Okay, on the board a couple. Carl says if someone questions my integrity. Jill says when somebody talks over me. My father saying I'm his favorite. That's an insult? Not taking what I say seriously. Okay, we get the general drift of this, yes or no? So why is that an insult? Why am I in conflict with you because of what you are saying or doing in the moment? You understand? Why do you think that is?
Because I'm identified with who I am in the moment.
The great unseen source of conflict with life is not because of the conditions we blame for it, but rather that conflict exists as it does between who and what we've imagined ourselves as being, and the fact that in any given moment, the experience of ourselves in that moment runs 100% in conflict with what we've imagined we are. This is the only conflict that we have, is when who we imagine ourselves to be runs into a moment that shows us we are not what we've imagined ourselves as being. Rather than seeing the problem lies in being identified with something we've imagined, we find fault with others and take it as an insult that they are the way they are, doing what they're doing, when the truth is all they are doing in that moment is bringing up in the moment something we don't know about ourselves, where without even dreaming it's possible, we can. And I'll ask you again, are there not certain conditions, people that you're with, that just like that, they can bring up inside of you qualities or characteristics that are not how you want to see yourself?
Yeah.
Please, when you see something like that, you are not seeing what is, you are seeing what you don't want to see. Remember I asked you, how can I look in the mirror and not want to see that? Well, now I'm asking you to see that when you're talking to people and they are, what are they doing? They're anything from our list. I blame the pain that I'm in on something that my mind is pointing to in you or in that moment that shouldn't be that way. And it never dawns on me after 10,000 years of encountering moments and people that shouldn't be what they are or that shouldn't be like that. and 100 million answers and solutions to the suffering born in those relationships, and I still have moments where something in me that wants to be frustrated, angry, resentful, regretful, something in me that wants to look at the moment as the source of my pain, refuses to see that I am in conflict in myself, and with this world. I'm so identified with who and what I think I know, should be, or have. I'm so sure of how I should look in your eyes that the moment I see you not seeing me the way I want to be seen, there's a problem. And I blame you for the problem, not for the fact that that this nature demands that everything about you agrees with the way it sees itself. That's called hell. And that's called the key lesson, where you sell your soul and do everything you can under the sun in order to garner what you believe you have to have from that person to confirm the image you have of yourself. So life is spent in a constant state of defensiveness. What did Christine say to the doctor? I don't understand why I'm so defensive. And he said to her, you have multiple unseen conflict. Every person in your life, when they do not toe the line the way that you expect them to do so, becomes for you someone to blame for the conflict that you feel with them, failing to see that the only conflict you have with another human being is because something about their behavior is bringing up something in this nature that you don't want to see because you shouldn't be like that. Or that you've imagined you're other than that. When I was thinking about everybody following me? Where did these images come from? Do you think to yourself that you walk around with a suitcase of images? You don't think that. None of us do. But the split second that someone or anything does the smallest thing that even intimates that sets this image off because it's challenged, this is what we say. I wrote this down. There's an immediate shock, right? Now, if you ever gets awake enough, you can watch that when there's this shock, there's always this little pause. And in this pause, here's what's going on. You're saying, I'll be right with you. This isn't who I really am, so give me a moment to sort out who I should be. I just need a moment. But of course, it happens like this. You can't see it. Something in you is trying to figure out how to deal with the conflict you blame on them. But on the other hand, you don't want people to not like you. You want to be seen as you imagine yourself. So you're busy being a pirate and a pious thief, all that, just so you can get through that moment and keep the image intact. That's why the story about the coach is important. How do you expect to clear the high jump when you always start with what you imagine you are instead of seeing your actual level? Because we never see our actual level. What we see is the level of others that we say is so low that they've set us off. Why else would a person be compelled to constantly excuse themselves? How many of you spend a lot of time excusing yourself? Not just to other people, to yourself. How did we ever fall into that state? So compromised. I want you to see something. I'll try to be nice for a minute. Really nice. Well, would it be fair to say, forget the family dinners? Would it be fair to say that any time you have to do any business with anyone, by and large, before you do that business, you're constantly trying to sort out the right way to do that business so that there's the least possible problem. And on one level, please don't understand me. If you have business, that can be practical. But why is there stress in it? Why is business stressful? Because my business isn't just the business that I'm doing with you. My business is to ensure that I go through this moment and come out exactly as I've imagined myself going into it. And I don't want anything to ruffle the feathers, to cause the kind of pain that and by the way, and I'm already stressed. Here's what I want to get to. We talk all the time. Christine isn't here, the person in our story, but how many of you know that you're wound pretty tight? Is that a fair assessment? Why? What have you gained for it? You're losing your life because all of the energy that's intended to be used in order to be and see yourself as you are so that you might indeed begin the work of being elevated above that level of consciousness. All of it goes into this immense constant strain. You know, do you ever snap? How many of you snap? You know, just you go off. Could be at your computer, at Alexa, or Siri, or you've paid $50,000 for a car that's telling you need to take a nap and stop driving. Who do you think? You're talking to a car. You can't talk to me like that. You're insulting me. So without knowing it, and I can't give you all the examples, you have to do some of the work yourself. Here I am, and I can definitely speak for myself at this level. I'm born into, in my instance, I'm born into a very successful family. Incredibly successful in the eyes of the world. And I grow up watching my father being embraced by people, failing to see him slipping a $50 bill, into their hand to get the table. Oh, Mr. Finley, like they really care about him. When they go, where's the dough, Joe? And you grow up thinking that I want to be treated like that. I want that. I want to be special. My father's special. My mother's special. These major celebrities, they're special. Look at the treatment they get. I want that treatment. I want it. And without knowing it, that young mind, it starts so early. It begins to fashion for itself an image that it can lean on. It fashions a segment of a personality. And it believes, just like a child, here's a child, he's abused. Instead of in a famous family, he's in a family of pain and he's pushed around, punished all the time. What does that child do? That child needs a persona. It needs something that it will be protected by. So it creates a fantasy world. The fantasy world of a person in an abusive family is no different than the fantasy world of somebody in a successful one. It's the same fantasy produced by a nature that doesn't know what to do with its pain, or that wants more pleasure, and not knowing what to do with pain or wanting more pleasure, they're exactly the same. We just don't see it as such. How do I know? Because when I'm in a lot of pain, I seek pleasure. And I never think to myself, I'm in the pursuit of this pleasure because there's something inside of myself that's broken and empty, and I want to fill it with something, anything. And this mind, it becomes totally dependent upon whatever this image is, but it's not just one image. Because every condition, especially as you're growing older, produces a certain response in that unconscious nature that looks for a shelter or a harbor, something that it can depend upon in a time to come, so that when any similar moment comes along, it knows exactly where it needs to go and who it needs to be. But the problem with it is that it seems to work in those moments and even may get you through those moments. But then comes a moment you're not expecting, and that exact same image and the dependency on it pops up, and now you're feeling insulted because someone doesn't see you as you've imagined yourself needing to be seen, so that you can be who you've imagined you are, safe and secure. Can you see it? When you, and it's not just when you're a kid, this still goes on all the time. When you imagine who or what you need to be, it seems so natural. And we never suspect that the need to imagine ourselves as whatever it is that we imagine. That you can't imagine who you are without creating something inside of yourself that then becomes the need to imitate the image. To imitate the image. So I imagine I should be successful. I get a picture in my mind. I'm going to be the next Elon Musk, or I'm going to be the next world champion tennis player, or whatever it is. And the instant that that mind creates the image, it then begins to, without you knowing it, imitating the image. So that when the image is challenged, nobody suspects that the reaction, the conflict they have with what's threatening it is because they're identified with something. How do I say this to you? I believe that having a lot of money or power or authority, being able to have pleasure when I want it, I grew up believing that that would be the solution to any form of suffering that I've got, and that all I need to do is get more of that and my suffering will diminish accordingly. Failing to see that whatever the image is that I believe is going to release me from what seems to be causing me my pain, that there's something in me that imitates life. It imitates life. Do you think to yourself that you are an imitation of life? You don't. But the proof that you are an imitation of the life you've imagined is that any time life challenges what you've imagined you are, up comes this fight, this conflict. And the fight proves to you that what you are imitating is really the way to go, when you have to understand you will never change as long as you imitate anything. It's impossible, because you're not starting in the right place. You're starting with an image of who and what you should be. And when life challenges that, you take the conflict you feel in that challenge as proof that you are as you've imagined yourself being, when nothing could be further from the truth. Do you get anxious at home by yourself? You know you do. What is that stress? You know what that stress is? Your mind has taken something from a moment, from a condition, from something from the past, or what you imagine the future is, and when it takes that condition, it looks at it and it compares that condition to what you have imitated and imagined yourself as being. And when that moment challenges the image you have of yourself, it proves the image to you true, and then sets you out on a fool's errand trying to change the person or the condition that you blame for the conflict you're in. The conflict is in this consciousness. The truth is, that's the only place this conflict is in. It's the only place this conflict is in. But what happens over millennia of human beings doing what? What do you think all of the laws are about? The laws are ways in which this unconscious nature establishes new parameters and new parameters so that it can measure itself by its own laws and then decide, well, see, the problem isn't with the stupidity of this law. The problem is the stupid people don't understand how smart I am to live by it, to believe in it. We're talking about an unseen conflict. I'll give you an example from my own life. You know that I like golf. It's the one sport, one activity that I can do because of being paralyzed and all that rest of that business. The one thing I can do, I love it. And it's taken me, I started at the age of 50, 52, somewhere around there. It's taken me over 20 years, hang on to your seats, to realize I'm not Tiger Woods. I'm not kidding. You start from a basis of wanting to imitate what you think is great because you want to feel the greatness you imagine they feel. And then when you start to imitate what you think is good and great, you start in the wrong place. You don't start with where you are, with what you are. You start with where you believe you should be, and then you punish and judge yourself endlessly for not living up to whatever that image or ideal is that that mind seized onto so that it can have a specific sense of self, failing to see that that sense of self is the only judge there is in that moment, and it is what is keeping you from becoming what and who you are meant to be as an individual, not as an imitative life, let alone trying to become or act like someone that you think is good. You don't know how deep this runs. That's the problem, even in a school like this. I'll keep you at arm's length, trust me. But you believe that you should know and be like the teacher. What a mistake you make. You know nothing about the teacher. You can't. You can't know anything about anyone, but you can know the truth of yourself in the relationship mirror of every moment that you have with everyone and anything. And when the stress and the strain and the pain, the frustration, you see golfers all the time. They get mad and they swear and they throw their club. You know why they do that? Because for a moment, they're denying the level they're at with their anger that proves to them they are better than they are. That's what all of that negativity is. Negativity is the validation of an imagined self using the pain of the moment to prop itself up so it doesn't have to see that it's nothing like what it's imagined it being. Happy Thanksgiving. Why am I telling you all of this? So that you can use every moment of your life to start where you are. Bring up the second key lesson, please. We would never see, let alone be aware of a present limitation, were it not for a brief moment of light, that in the same moment it reveals some character shortfall, is opening our eyes to the possibility of attaining some yet realized higher order of self. It is the ultimate contradiction that there is something in us that when some revelation comes up about ourselves, our greed, all the characters in the first key lesson, things you've seen in yourself, that in that same moment that I see that, it is I who judge myself. It is I who crucify myself. Not the condition, not the person, not the circumstance. It is a mind divided up into a nature that depends upon an image it has to validate and lend it security. And when that image is challenged, that insecurity turns into fear. That fear creates enemies, and you have conflict that never stops. When instead of conflict, you're meant to be changed. We've talked in the past about how without knowing it, we live in a certain kind of constricted life that has the conflict it does in it, because unseen but palpable is the incessant pain of a mind that, for having imagined and identified with whatever that it is that nature imitates in order to lend it a certain sense of self. It is its attachment and dependency on that sense of self that is the source of the conflict it has with every moment. Now, in what I've told you is freedom. Why is there freedom in what I've told you? Because when the moment comes and I start to feel this stress, this strain, this pain, this conflict, isn't it extraordinary? I can do the one thing, and it begins with having seen some of what it is that you've been educated with here tonight. Anything that doesn't see me the way I want to be seen is an insult to the me that imagines myself as I am. On the good side of all this, and all of it's good, the day will come when you can't be insulted. It's extraordinary how the littlest thing can be an insult, isn't it? We don't see it at all. When you react to something that someone says, by and large, they have insulted you. Why else would you resist? How many of you know you summarily resist passing comments, the way people look at you? They raise an eye, which I can't do. That just gave me a headache. And you have a reaction. And you take the reaction as the proof there's something wrong with that person for insulting or intimating in some way that you're less than what? Than what you have imagined. So is the problem what they've said or done, or does the problem lie in a consciousness that has imagined itself as being something that it's not, in order to lend itself a sense of self that isn't real, and that the moment isn't showing you that there's something wrong with you? It's showing you that you are living from a nature that doesn't know anything about what it's created, about its world. And you can grow in that, you can understand that. But if you want, here's the exercise. What did the coach tell the young man who wanted to get above a certain level of high jump? What did he say to him? He said, son, you're never going to get over it as long as you keep starting from who and what you, because I watch you. I didn't too much in the story. I watch you. Every time you fail the jump, you yell. You get angry at the high bar. You blame the pit that you were trying to jump in every time. Why do you get? What's all this frustration? And you ask yourself, what's all this frustration? I'm not. This isn't how I am. I'm better than this. No, you're not. But yes, you are. But you'll never know the better until you get over the bitterness that's connected to trying to make the world conform to what you've imagined yourself as being. Start where you are. Nobody wants to start where they are because we've already judged that we shouldn't be that way. Isn't it true? I'm above that. Would you like some good news? I don't know if you'll take it. You're not above anything. There's no you to be above anything. Start where you are with what you are. In that moment where you feel the conflict, when John, when she says you're not parking right, or any of the other ways in which they did that. And here's the amazing thing. I'm only reacting the way I am because I'm very sensitive. I'm a sensitive soul. You're not a sensitive soul. You're someone who is sensitive to anyone and anything that even remotely suggests that who you are and imagine yourself as being should never be questioned. Because, last part, Remember, I'm looking in the mirror. Oh, Jesus. What happened to you? I better do something. I'm gonna dye my beard. I'm gonna get hair plugs. I'm gonna get a fake 6-pack of abs. Because I shouldn't look this way. Now, am I looking at what I am, or am I looking at what I shouldn't be? I'm looking at what I shouldn't be. Now, can you extrapolate that to I'm looking at you? I'm looking at this moment that I'm in. My conflict with it is because it shouldn't be that way. There's no such thing as it shouldn't be that way without something in me already knowing how it should be. So the conflict is between a consciousness identified with one image and a condition that threatens the image that it believes it depends upon to be secure. When you see all of this, it will collapse. Bit by bit, not all at once, but you will see it collapse. But first you have to go through seeing that you have been a pirate, you've been a fake priest, you've been all the things that you have been in your life because you didn't know what else to be. It's a serial, you've heard of a serial killer? It's a serial consciousness. It's a serial consciousness. It changes according to the condition that challenges the images that are stored in it. And whatever the image is that's triggered will produce yet another identity that comes up that seems to be made real by the present moment when it is the past crucifying the present moment and everyone, including yourself, in it. Got it? Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
All right, I think we're ready to go. Sound good on your end? All right. I just want to check something here really quick, and I think we are good. All right, so welcome back to the second part of our class. We're going to get going with our Q&A right now. If you're in the room, of course, you know you can come up anytime and join in and speak at the mic. If you're online, if you are on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand. Just click or tap the hand icon once, and that raises your hand, and I will unmute you so that you can speak with Guy directly. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can send a question or a comment in the chat area there, and I will read it to the group. Before we get started, just a couple quick reminders. Let's see, so first of all, our holiday banquet is coming up very quickly, just in 2 weeks. I think Guy will be giving an unofficial intro talk 2 weeks from tonight to our holiday banquet, and so that's December 11th is 2 weeks from now, and then the banquet officially starts the weekend of December 13th through the 15th. So remember to join us for that. Tune in if you can live. It will be broadcast out on all of our channels per the usual. The replays won't be available on our channels for free like they usually are. You will need to get the replay package if you want to have access to the replays after the broadcast. And it's a great way to have that material as you know, to work with as long as you wish, and also to support the foundation. And I also wanted to let you know, just a quick reminder about the fact that our class schedule is changing, and I've been giving this announcement several times. I think most people have heard it by now, but I will just say that for anyone who hasn't heard it yet, right after the banquet, the foundation is closing for 3 weeks. We won't have classes in person or online. We'll start back up in January. There's a new schedule in January. We're not going to have live classes on Wednesday nights, but we will still broadcast a best of the best GF talk on Wednesdays. There will be a new start time for our Monday and Friday study groups. They're going to start at 6 p.m. Pacific. And Guy will just be speaking live on the weekends on his Insight Timer talks on Saturday and on his Sunday morning talks, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. All of that information is on our website. We got it posted up there in the events section, so you can go and read more about it if you haven't heard this yet. And there's also a printable calendar there that you can download and just keep handy so that you always know when we're going to be at what time. All right.
And it's highly likely that December 31st, New Year's Eve, that we will have our annual bonfire up there on the hill and have a little roast of some kind and maybe a little talk. So stay tuned.
All right, and that'll be for in-person, but we'll probably record that talk and get it posted, I would think, for the people who weren't there.
As you wish, yeah, like you. Well, we're closing for the holidays for 3 weeks, but I thought it would be nice. It's always nice to have that big bonfire. And who doesn't like marshmallows and s'mores and whatever else we can put together for treats?
All right.
More to come.
All right, so stay tuned for more info about that. All right, we're ready to start our Q&A unless, Guy, you have some opening remarks.
No.
No, okay. So let me just get organized here. I do have a couple of written questions that we can get started with, and I don't think I see any hands up yet. No, so let's get started with one of our written questions. This actually came in through our website, and I'll send it over to you here, Guy. Just a moment, and there it is. Okay. So this came in from Clyde, longtime viewer. Recently, it seems friends of the foundation have spoken of close family members passing away. So the time has come for me. My father passed away last Tuesday. I'm the second son, and it seems my other siblings are hesitant to plan or make any decisions about any celebrations, so they have fallen somewhat to me. My father is a man who had a broad following of friends and family. I find myself a little shocked that other siblings have not stepped forward to plan anything. I also am a little hesitant about the feeling I have about sensing a role I didn't think I would be tasked with. I'm hoping that Guy might explain if he knows what my perplexity is. Thank you, Clyde.
I forgot what the line was when suddenly a moment comes along that you're not prepared for with someone or something, but it was something like, hold on, I'll be right with you. Just give me a second to sort through all the possible answers, and as soon as I have one I'm comfortable with, I'll get to you, even though that happens in a heartbeat. That's what Clyde is asking. First, I'm sorry for your loss. You know, I struggle quite a bit with what I should say or not say to you. On one hand, I'm so not interested in being a Pied Piper of anything, I can't even begin to tell you. But in contrast to that, there are things that, for instance, that I didn't know and wouldn't know if it hadn't been given to me. And at first, these things were given to me much in the way they are being given to you. But your work is not about being given that which you are intended to find within yourself. And if you can recall the second key lesson, it said something along the lines that the things that we see in our character, that they are at once a revelation of something that needs to be reconciled, and at the same time, it is the promise of its reconciliation if we will allow that light to do within us what it has come to do. Why would I be shown the things about myself that I am? Do you think God would want to show you something that didn't have hidden in it the key to transcending the character that's been revealed? Because I promise you that everything that you're given to see is at once that which you know you can no longer be because of what you've imitated, and at the same time the recognition that I can't be that person anymore. I can't. Now, I'm not the one I'm not imitating. You can't, that's good. You can't imitate negation. I don't know if you understand that. Negation is the end of something. Imitation is always the beginning of something. So with that in mind, I would say to you this. You must know somewhere inside of you that you're not to be someone who is thrown into confusion every time some contrary condition comes to you. Wouldn't you like, because that's what you're meant to be. You're meant to be an open, intelligent creature that when conditions come along, they can't throw you into confusion, because confusion is always the evidence of imitation. Can you not see that? Confusion is always a disparity between what I think and want and should be versus what might be if I don't act this. So that confusion is the proof of a misunderstanding of yourself, not the difficulty of the situation you're in. But we want the situation to be difficult because it proves to us that we are as we've imagined ourselves being, and now we're just thrown into not knowing what to do. You're just going down a river. It has its eddies, it has its currents. It's going where it's going. You've imagined you're supposed to go someplace. And you measure yourself according to whether or not you've reached whatever it is you've imagined. That's hell. So what Clyde's saying is, I'm at a loss because I didn't think I'd be tasked with this. Here, Clyde, the condition isn't the task. The task is to see that something in me wants to be all to everyone, but on the other hand, I don't want to be involved with anyone if the task falls on me entirely. Is that true or not? We all go through it. When my mother died, not one of my brothers, nobody wanted to go while she was dying. It was unbelievable. Now, I understood, thank God, why they're like that. They're afraid of death. They don't want to see the end of anything. They don't want to see suffering because they don't want to know suffering. Because they've imagined that suffering is something that will finally be allayed when they become whatever it is they've imagined. My father, when he died, everybody's hands off. It's not my job. That was my older brother. That was his favorite saying. No matter what it was, that's not my job. It is your job. It is your job. Your job is what life gives you in the moment. Your job isn't to try to fight with what life gives you. Your job is to do the best with what life gives you in the moment based on what you understand as best you can understand it. And when you see your understanding comes up short, now you know something you didn't understand before. I can't continue to be that person. And that's how it goes. You're looking for a happy ending. You can't have a happy ending that you haven't imagined, and your happy endings that you've imagined is the source of all your suffering. God, don't be tasked. How do I see? This is the problem, because if I say this, then I say that. Here's the problem. He's saying nobody wants to step up and do what needs to be done. And the truth is, I don't want to do it either, but I don't want to let this thing go by without it being done. So I'm going to do it with resentment. Yes or no? My idiot brothers, Clyde, trust me, it's one family, man. You think you've got brothers and sisters and mom and dad. No, it's one family. One unconscious nature divided into endless segments. So I can't tell you what to do. I wouldn't even if I could. But I can tell you, start where you are. Not with what you don't want, not with even what you do. Start with what you are. See what it is that you're given to see. Take the step that comes accordingly. And you can. Do you ever think to yourself, what a miserable failure I am? Do you? Who's judging you? Did you set yourself out on this road? Did you? Well, how'd you get on it? I don't know. Exactly. Your pain is in what you know, not in what you don't know. And what you think you know is because of who you've imagined yourself to be. So the more you see how your pain is connected to wanting to fulfill or not have to deal with this, the more you understand that, the more you'll be right in the middle of this crucible of the moment and learning from what the moment has brought you to see about yourself. Then you become a different human being. And whether you do or don't do, really in the long run it makes no difference at all. I would say that it's a right thing to do to honor your father. But outside of that, Clyde, I've done the best I can.
Okay, there's a question that came in on YouTube on a different video, but it's totally related. So I'm going to read this, and I just sent it to you, Guy.
Kidoki.
This is from Jordan. How can Jordan stop resisting his own conclusions? My mind constantly vacillates between, should I do this? No, I shouldn't, because a spiritual man wouldn't want to explore being a millionaire or a successful businessman, etc.
Stop right there. I'm a mess because I'm in constant conflict. I want it all. But spiritual people don't want things. You're wrong, but spiritual people don't judge. So my nature that is what it is, unbridled, endlessly appetite, it wants what it wants, but I shouldn't have that appetite. That's called conflict, isn't it? Now, can that conflict resolve itself? What does it do? It creates Jordan. It produces Clyde. It makes you or me, whatever we are, insulted at the drop of a hat, and then trying to figure out how to straighten people out who don't realize that we're the second coming. That's the problem. So the conflict isn't whether I should be a millionaire or a billionaire or a scientist or whatever it is, a successful person. The conflict is that I want listen, this is the thing. See, you think you want what you've imagined. You think you want what you've imagined. It isn't what you've imagined that you want. What you want is to be someone that you are imagining, so that you have some substance to yourself, failing to see that whatever substance you build out of that dream will always come undone, because that's what dreams do in this world. They disintegrate. So it doesn't matter whether you do or don't. And I know this is always the same thing, because I can hear it. And Jordan, no offense if you're watching, because all the students do it. But what should I do? What should I be? What are your options? I'm sorry. Be what you are. Be what you are. And if you see, to some extent, that I can't really be what I want to be, because on one hand, I do recognize it's a dead end. It goes nowhere. But it doesn't change the desire, does it? Do you understand? The desire goes nowhere, but it doesn't free me from the desire. That's where you have to stay. And you'll vacillate between the opposites. You'll yield to the temptation, and you'll get a taste of what happens. Might be good, might be bad. In the end, you'll see it was forfeit, And then you'll go back to say, well, that wasn't the right thing to do. And then you'll identify with being someone who knows what the right thing to do is and what it's not. And that has to be purified too. You can't imagine a goodness that exists in an endless purification. Goodness for us always has an end to it. It always has the fulfillment of a promise. That's what we call goodness. That isn't goodness at all. Goodness is the endless revelation of something that is good in and of itself, creating more of itself, purifying itself, so that in the purity of all those discoveries, a person can finally recognize and properly give glory to God, who made it possible for you to see these things about yourself that you would have never seen before, even suspected is true. Read the second part of Jordan's thing.
In the same time, I'm limiting myself completely with this painful conclusion because I can't explore anything in this physical world because I have a false image of what a spiritual person should look like because my mind has already reached a concrete conclusion. I need help. I want to explore everything in this physical life while still doing this work.
Go! Here's his problem. I've imagined and have a derivative sense of self based on what I believe an image is of a successful person. So I have adopted that image. I want to imitate it because the more I imitate it, the more I feel the content of that self. But on the other hand, I'm absolutely terrified that if I actually go out and try to do something as I've imagined, I'm going to run into something that's going to say, sorry, Charlie, you can't do that. You're not up to it. You'll never make it. Then what's going to happen to me? Because I put my eggs in this basket. All your eggs have to be broken because they're all identities. But you can't break them yourself. You have to go through what you have to go through. Jordan, listen to me. Please, I'm begging you, go make $100 million and donate some here. You can do that. I don't mean donate some here. King David, Solomon. There's nothing in the spiritual life that says you can't have what this world offers, but you know when you finally have what this world offers? When you don't want it anymore. Because then you're free of the desire that drove you to start with. It's the desire that creates the image. The image is the fulfillment of a sense of self that momentarily derives an identity. So you can't separate desire and identification. They're the same thing. There is nothing to identify with that isn't born of desire. So the more you understand this impossible construct between a desire that tries to imagine freedom for itself and the fact that whatever it imagines it's a captive of because it's dependent on it, then you can start to recognize at last, what I have to do is wake up. Go do it, but stay awake. Write it down, Jordan. Go for it, but I'm going to stay as awake as I can. That's the end of it, whatever it may be. Don't be afraid to run into yourself. You have to run into yourself. But the self you're running into that judges you when you run into it isn't you. That's the only way you'll ever know that. Okay, one more.
Oh dear, sorry.
Don't let me forget to say Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
This is just a comment that came in from Patricia. I'm critical of others as I am to myself. I'm struggling to not analyze the moment to judge others and then feel bad about myself. There doesn't seem to be that real wake-up call.
Oh, Patricia. Imagine a woman, she grows up on a farm. Her whole life, all she hears in the morning is cock-a-doodle-doo. But she's convinced she has no alarm system. Life is always going cock-a-doodle-doo. It is, it's always going, wake up, wake up. It's always doing that. But we don't recognize the wake-up call because we take it as a mistaken, what do I want to say? A mistaken, what do I want? I'm not accepting the call. I'm just not. I don't recognize the phone number. You want to know when the wake-up call comes, Patricia, every time that you get angry. Every time you feel frustration, every time you throw something, every time you wish people weren't the way they are, every time you judge yourself because some condition reveals something about your consciousness, every last one of those moments where there is this sudden, and for the longest time it's very subtle, eventually it'll become, you can't miss it. Anytime there is this constriction, anytime there's this summary resistance, the resistance is the appearance of a wake-up call. Something is stirring that which doesn't want to be stirred. In that stirring is a revelation. In that revelation, the possibility of transcending that consciousness. You have to learn to recognize it, to see it. Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.